if you kind of like go out of the picture, that's what ducking actually looks like, what you were just looking at there. Stephen Miller, White House Senior Policy Advisor. He listed the credentials, but he did duck the question, and a serious one, to be honest, about the President's National Security Advisor. Other things going on here. Look, Russia is the backdrop for Mike Flynn's discussions after a country has been accused by the intelligence agencies of interfering in the U.S. election. Meanwhile, the White House not elaborating much more on the North Korean missile test, Donald Trump's one-sentence statement yesterday, and to top it all off, Kellyanne Conway, the top White House aide, being accused of saying a little too much when she was pitching Ivanka's clothing line, breaking ethics rules on Fox News. So we've got some gaffes, we've got some action, we've got some ducking. Let's bring in our supercharged political panel. Back with me, Joan Walsh, an MSNBC analyst and author, and Cristina Greer, associate professor of political science at Fordham, and Brian Darling, a former aide to Senator Rand Paul and a Heritage Foundation fellow. Brian, I'm starting with you because you are new. I just rattle off a bunch of stuff. What is your sense of this evolving young administration, how they're dealing with some of these errors, some of which you could argue are unforced?
Well, they haven't proven very good at ducking questions, I'll tell you that. With the Flynn controversy, it's fascinating because he kind of was thrown under the bus by Chris Christie today on CNN. And to see other administration officials not jumping to General Flynn's defense, that's a troubling sign for him. And the possibility that he gave information to the vice president that was wrong, that was incorrect, telling the vice president, and the vice president telling America that Flynn didn't talk about the sanctions, didn't talk with the Russians about that. That is problematic. I think with Kellyanne Conway, it's a bit of a mountain out of a molehill. I believe she probably was trying to be funny and tell a joke, and there is a real question as to whether she was using her official position to actually pimp a product or promote a product. I mean, she was on Fox News and she tried to make a quip. I think that was troublesome in a sense because she had to dial it back and walk it back and played a whole day explaining herself away. But this administration is clearly having growing pains. They're having a very difficult time communicating, and hopefully they can get a little better at it as time goes on.
Joan?
I think you've got a circular firing squad in the West Wing right now, and I really don't know who survives. I think that the amount of leaking out of a young administration where there's usually a sense of comedy and shared goals is astonishing. I think Mike Flynn is in serious trouble. I don't know how he survives in a normal situation. I would say to you, he's going to be gone very quickly. But this is not a normal situation, and Trump seems to be very loyal to him. But you definitely have people who are feuding, who don't have one another's backs, who are elevating people's the gaffes and misstatements. And you have Stephen Miller, who's almost as good as Kellyanne in ducking and just barraging you with almost meaningless factoids that keep him from answering the question.
And Cristina, take a listen to President Trump on the plane, his version of a response or a non-response to this Flynn issue, which is a serious question about our statecraft and whether something was being done to undermine the U.S. government position towards Russia. Take a listen.
I don't know about it. I haven't seen it. What report is that? I haven't seen it.
Reporting that he talked to the ambassador to Russia before you were inaugurated about sanctions, maybe trying to...
I haven't seen that. I'll look at that.
He said I hasn't seen it. He could have said I can't hear you because it's loud on Air Force One. But the question was, well, this report at that point had been out 16 hours, now even longer.
Right.
And the president's position is, oh, I just don't keep track of the most serious allegations against my NSA advisor.
Well, this has shown us a few things. One, he's shown that he's a boy king, right? And so things are happening and he has no idea. Two, he's already told us that he doesn't like to read. He doesn't believe in reading. He thinks it's a waste of time. Three, he's showing us that he doesn't understand the Constitution. He hasn't read the Constitution. He hasn't even read the Federalist Papers, because if he'd read the Federalist Papers, he'd see what Joan is saying, which is Federalist 10, where it talks about factions. And he's got way too many factions in his own camp, in his own party. We can't have people on the Saturday shows contradicting people on the Sunday shows. You can't have people on the left side of your office contradicting people on the right side of your office. And so right now, you know, Trump's loyalty can be very strong, and then it fades, right? You have Gorsuch, who's essentially going out for self, saying, well, you know, these comments are sort of
about
demoralizing,
judges,
and I'm distancing myself from the president, because he doesn't need the president anymore, because he needs the Democrats actually to become a Supreme Court nominee or to become a Supreme Court justice. So we're seeing not just the circular firing squad, but people who pretty soon will start to not just eat their young, but eat their colleagues as well. And pretty soon it's going to turn on the president. Like, if he isn't reading briefs, if he is not understanding things, if he's not interested, right? You can only use him, but for so long, until you realize you don't need him to actually get your own agenda passed. And it might be easier to get rid of him at a certain point in time.
Well, Brian, let me bring you in. There are allegations there of both ignorance and what I believe was widespread political cannibalism, I think is what Cristina is getting at. Is that fair to this administration, Brian, or what's your view?
Not at all. I don't think it's fair. I think that President Trump has followed through in the promises that he made to the American people. I mean, I think people are getting mad at him because he's actually following through with his promises. And look at Congress. Compare it with what he's doing to Congress. Congress promised to repeal Obamacare. They're dragging their feet on that. They're supposed to help President Trump reform the tax code and give us tax reform and tax cuts. They're not doing anything on that. So if you look at the difference between the president, who's actually following through in his promises, and congressional Republicans, the congressional Republicans are the ones that are falling down on their face, and President Trump is the one who's actually checking off his list of presidential promises one by one, and he's doing them very quickly.
I guess, Brian, I would challenge you a bit on that, because I think President Trump actually is the one who played a role in slowing down the House Republicans, because he started hearing all the flack from people who didn't believe that he was really going to repeal it, who thought he would replace it first, and he has been a voice of caution in terms of repealing before replacing. And I think he doesn't want to. I really don't think he wants to get stuck with the political nightmare of repealing without replacing, and they just can't replace. They can't agree on a replacement.
Well, and they also had 8 years to do it.
They can flat out repeal it. That's what they promised the American people, and they need to follow through with that promise.
He promised to repeal and replace. He promised to put something else in place. I don't believe him. I didn't vote for him. I don't like him. But he did all along say, I'm not going to strip you all of all your coverage, you people who've gotten coverage. And now he sees that I never defend him, Brian. I just have to say, I think that he sees dysfunction in the Republicans, but he's also contributing to it, because he does not want to make the tough decisions involved in certainly in just repealing and saying goodbye to your health care, 30 million people.
Brian, and then Cristina.
I say goodbye to Obamacare. That's what the American people voted for. They don't like it. They don't want it. Their premiums are going through the roof. They're not getting what they were promised. They had to drop that. Many of them had to switch health care plans and get new doctors. They don't like it. And going back to the system we had before we had Obamacare would not be the end of the world.
So we're one of the few democracies in the entire world that doesn't have, health care, which is highly problematic. 2, when we polled Republicans, half of them didn't understand that Obamacare was also the ACA. 3, Republicans had 8 years of fighting Obama to figure out what they wanted to replace or repair Obamacare with. They just wanted to be the party of no and never actually had a plan. So there is chaos, because the president is trying to sort of speak out of both sides of his mouth. And now Republicans are going back to their home districts saying, okay, we're going to repeal it just like the president said. And now people are realizing they actually need this health care, right? There is something called health care that they actually, it may be expensive and it's absolutely not perfect.
It's never been more popular in the polls than it is right now.
Right. So, I mean, I think also this particular president contributes to the chaos, because what we argue about and read about the president in the morning is usually not what we have to deal with during lunchtime, and it's usually not what we're talking about at dinner time. So it's hard for the Republicans to actually get forward with an agenda when you're dealing with someone who's saying and doing things on a whim.
You must be part professor and part lawyer, because your concluding arguments match your opening arguments. Now I know exactly what your point was. Cristina, Greer, and Joan Walsh, thank you both. And Brian Darling, I want you to stick around, because we're going to talk some Senate procedure, which you know is going to be exciting. So stick around with us.